The rattlesnake struck before Victoria Hale even saw it coming. One moment, the billionaire CEO was leading 12 people through rising mud and lightning. The next, she was on the ground, venom pumping through her thigh, rain hammering her face, and the only person who didn't run was a single father she'd barely noticed an hour ago. Lucas Mercer had no training for this. No plan, just his daughter's face flashing through his mind as he dropped to his knees beside the most powerful woman in Colorado and realized she was going to die unless he did something right now. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please hit the like button and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get into it. Lucas Mercer was not a hiking person. He was a stay-home and fix-the-leaking sink person, a pack Emma's lunch at 6 in the morning person, a check his bank account 3 times before buying groceries person. Hiking required gear he didn't own, time he didn't have, and optimism about the outdoors he'd lost somewhere around the 3rd year of being a single father. But Derek had insisted. "Come on, man, you need this," Derek had said over beers 2 weeks ago, pushing a printed invitation across the sticky bar table. "It's not some corporate bullshit retreat." Well, okay, it is corporate bullshit, but it's in the mountains. Fresh air. No Emma asking for snacks every 11 minutes. When's the last time you did something for yourself? Lucas had stared at the invitation. Hale Industries Executive Wellness Experience, September 14th to 15th. Guided Wilderness Leadership Retreat in the San Juan Mountains. "I'm not an executive," Lucas had said. "You're my +1. I'm an executive." "You're a regional manager at a software company." "Same thing." Derek had grinned. "Come on, Victoria Hale herself is leading it. You know how rare that is? She doesn't do this stuff, ever." Lucas knew who Victoria Hale was. Everyone in Denver knew who Victoria Hale was. 30 years old, self-made billionaire, CEO of Hale Industries, the tech conglomerate that had gone from a garage startup to a Fortune 500 company in under 7 years. She was brilliant, ruthless, and according to every magazine cover Lucas had ever seen in a grocery store checkout line, devastatingly beautiful in that untouchable way that made normal people feel like different species. "Why would I want to spend a weekend watching rich people pretend to rough it?" Lucas had asked. "Because your daughter's with your mom that weekend anyway. Because you haven't left Denver in 2 years. Because I'm your best friend, and I'm telling you that if you don't come, I'm going to show up at your apartment and physically drag you into my car." So here Lucas was, standing in a gravel parking lot at the base of the San Juan Mountains at 7 in the morning, wearing borrowed hiking boots that were half a size too small and a backpack Derek had lent him that smelled faintly of gym socks. There were 12 people total. Lucas recognized a few faces from Derek's company events, polished professionals in expensive athletic wear that still had creases from the packaging. Everyone looked like they'd stepped out of an REI catalog. Lucas looked like a guy who'd gotten dressed in the dark, which was accurate. And then there was Victoria Hale. She stood near the trailhead, talking to one of the guides. Lucas had expected someone who matched the magazine covers. Sharp suit, perfect hair, the kind of presence that announced itself before she even spoke. Instead, Victoria Hale wore plain gray hiking pants, a dark green base layer, and scuffed boots that had clearly seen actual use. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup that Lucas could see. No jewelry except a watch that looked more practical than expensive. She looked normal. Well, normal, if normal meant tall, athletic, and carrying herself with the kind of quiet confidence that made people move out of her way without her asking. "That's her?" Lucas muttered to Derek. "Yep. She doesn't look like a billionaire." "What's a billionaire supposed to look like?" "I don't know. Richer." Derek snorted. "Wait till she opens her mouth. You'll know." At 7:15, Victoria clapped her hands once. Conversations died immediately. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was clear, measured, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to command attention. "Thank you for being here. I know some of you drove several hours. I appreciate your time." Polite nods around the group. "This isn't a typical corporate retreat," Victoria continued. "You won't be doing trust falls or rope courses or any of that nonsense. This is a 12-mile hike through some of the most beautiful terrain in Colorado. The goal is simple: Disconnect from your devices, reconnect with the natural world, and remember what it feels like to rely on yourself instead of technology. She glanced at the sky. Clear blue, not a cloud in sight, perfect hiking weather. We'll stop for lunch around mile 6, then complete the loop back here by late afternoon. The trail is rated moderate, but there are steep sections. If you need to slow down, speak up. If you need to stop, we stop. No one gets left behind. She paused. Questions? A woman in the front raised her hand. Will there be Wi-Fi at the lunch spot? Victoria's expression didn't change, but Lucas caught the faint flicker of something. Disappointment, maybe, in her eyes. No, Victoria said simply. What about cell service? Unlikely. The woman looked horrified. If that's a problem, Victoria said, you're welcome to wait here. Otherwise, I suggest embracing the disconnection. You might find it more valuable than you think. She looked around the group. Anyone else? Silence. Then let's move. But the first hour of this hike was easy. Too easy. The trail wound through pine forest, wide and well-maintained, with just enough incline to make Lucas aware he hadn't exercised in months. Derek kept up a steady stream of commentary about work gossip Lucas didn't care about, and ahead of them, Victoria moved with the kind of steady, efficient pace that suggested she could do this all day without breaking a sweat. Lucas found himself watching her more than he wanted to admit. It wasn't attraction, or at least he told himself it wasn't. It was curiosity. She didn't act like someone worth billions of dollars. She helped an older man adjust his pack straps. She pointed out a hawk circling overhead. She stopped to let people catch their breath without making them feel weak for needing it. At one point, Derek elbowed him. You're staring. I'm not. You are. It's weird. I'm just surprised, okay? I thought she'd be more of an asshole? More corporate. Derek laughed. She's both. Wait. By mile 3, the trail got harder. The incline sharpened. The trees thinned. The views opened up into sprawling vistas of mountain ridges and valleys so vast, they made Lucas feel tiny in a way that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. His thighs burned. His borrowed boots rubbed a blister on his left heel. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other and not embarrassing himself by asking for a break. At mile 4, they reached a rocky outcrop with a view that shut everyone up. Victoria stopped. We'll take 10 minutes here. People collapsed onto rocks, pulling out water bottles and trail mix. Lucas found a flat boulder near the edge and sat down hard, his legs screaming. Derek flopped beside him, groaning dramatically. This is hell, Derek muttered. You're the one who dragged me here. Yeah, but I thought it'd be easier. Lucas unscrewed his water bottle and drank half of it in one go. His heart was pounding, his shirt damp with sweat despite the cool mountain air. He glanced over at Victoria, who stood near the edge of the outcrop, looking out at the mountains with an expression he couldn't quite read. She wasn't even breathing hard. Does she do this a lot? Lucas asked. Derek shrugged. No idea. She doesn't exactly share her hobbies with middle management. One of the guides, a younger guy, with sun-bleached hair and a name tag that said Connor, wandered over to Victoria and said something Lucas couldn't hear. She nodded, glanced at her watch, then turned back to the group. We're making good time, she called. Another 2 miles to the lunch spot. Everyone good to continue? Murmurs of agreement, though Lucas noticed a couple people looked less than thrilled. Victoria's gaze swept the group, and for a split second her eyes landed on Lucas. He didn't know why he felt like he'd been caught doing something wrong. She looked away. Let's move, she said. Tights. The storm came out of nowhere. One moment, the sky was clear. The next, a wall of dark clouds rolled over the ridge like something alive, swallowing the blue in minutes. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. The wind picked up, sharp and cold, carrying the smell of rain. That's not good, Derek said, staring at the sky. Connor, the guide, was already talking into a radio, his expression tight. Victoria had stopped walking. She looked up at the clouds, then at her watch, then back at Connor. They exchanged words Lucas couldn't hear, but he saw the tension in her shoulders. Everyone, listen up, Victoria called, her voice cutting through the rising wind. Weather's moving in faster than expected. We're going to pick up the pace and head for higher ground. Stay close, stay together, and watch your footing. The trail's going to get slippery. How much farther? Someone asked nervously. 1/2 mile to the ridge. We'll reassess there. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and threatening. They moved faster. The trail narrowed, winding upward through loose rock and exposed roots. The wind howled. The first raindrops hit like pellets, cold and sharp, and within seconds the sky opened up. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking through Lucas's jacket in minutes. The trail turned to mud. People slipped, cursed, grabbed onto trees to steady themselves. Lucas's heart pounded. This wasn't normal hiking rain. This was the kind of storm that turned mountains dangerous. Ahead, Victoria moved with absolute focus, calling out warnings about rocks and drop-offs, helping people over rough patches without slowing down. Connor and the other guide flanked the group, keeping everyone moving. Lightning cracked overhead, so close Lucas felt the hair on his arms stand up. Jesus Christ, Derek panted beside him. This is insane. Just keep moving, Lucas said, though his own hands were shaking. They rounded a switchback. The trail opened onto a narrow ridge, wind screaming across it. Rain coming down so hard Lucas could barely see 10 feet ahead. Victoria shouted something, but the wind tore the words away. And then someone screamed. Lucas's head snapped around. One of the women, mid-40s, expensive fleece, he'd seen her talking on a Bluetooth headset in the parking lot, had stumbled off the trail, trying to get away from the edge. She pointed at the ground, face pale. "Snake!" she shrieked. "There's a snake!" People scattered, panic rippled through the group. Connor yelled for everyone to stay calm, but nobody was listening. Lucas saw the snake, a rattlesnake, coiled in the mud near a cluster of rocks, agitated by the chaos, its tail rattling a warning no one could hear over the storm. Victoria was already moving toward it, waving people back. "Give it space," she called. "Just go around." The snake struck. It happened so fast Lucas almost missed it. Victoria stepped wrong, or the mud shifted, and suddenly she was too close, and the rattlesnake lunged, fangs sinking into her thigh just above her knee. She gasped, stumbled backward, caught herself on a rock. For a second, nobody moved. Then Connor was running toward her, and Derek was shouting, and the woman who'd screamed was sobbing, and Lucas felt his entire body lock up because he'd just watched a billionaire CEO get bitten by a rattlesnake on the side of a mountain in the middle of a lightning storm. And this couldn't be real. Victoria pressed a hand to her thigh. Her face had gone white. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice was tight. "You're not fine," Connor said, crouching beside her. "Let me see." She pulled her hand away. Blood mixed with rainwater running down her leg. The bite was high on her thigh, 2 puncture marks already swelling red. Connor swore under his breath. "Radio for help," Victoria said. "Already tried. Can't get through. Storm's blocking everything." "Try again." Connor pulled out the radio, but all that came through was static. Lucas watched Victoria's face. She was trying to stay calm, but he saw the fear creeping in at the edges. Saw the way her hand shook when she touched the bite again. Rattlesnake venom worked fast. He didn't know much about snakes, but he knew that. "We need to get her down the mountain," one of the guides said. "In this storm?" Derek asked, voice rising. "Are you kidding?" "We don't have a choice. She can't walk on that leg." "Then we carry her." Victoria shook her head. "I can walk." "You shouldn't." "I can walk." She tried to stand. Her leg buckled immediately. Connor caught her before she hit the ground. "Okay," Connor said. "New plan. We get to shelter, wait out the storm, and keep trying the radio. There's a rock overhang about a 1/4 mile from here. We can—" Another crack of lightning, so close Lucas felt the thunder in his chest. "We need to move now," Victoria said. Her voice was weaker. The venom was spreading. Connor looked at the other guide. "You take the group down the main trail. I'll take her to the overhang." "You can't go alone," the guide argued. "Then someone comes with me." Connor looked at the group. Wet, terrified civilians. No one who looked like they could handle this. His eyes landed on Lucas. "You," Connor said. "You look strong. Can you help me carry her?" Lucas's mouth went dry. Lucas," Derek said quietly. "Man." Lucas looked at Victoria. She was staring at him, rain dripping from her hair, her face pale, her eyes sharp despite the pain. She didn't say anything, didn't ask him to help, just looked at him like she was measuring something she couldn't put into words. "Yeah," Lucas heard himself say. I'll help. They moved through the storm like ghosts. Connor took one side, Lucas took the other. Victoria's arm slung over his shoulders, her weight leaning into him, her breathing harsh and uneven. She didn't complain, didn't cry out. But Lucas felt the tremor in her body, felt the way she gripped his jacket like she was holding onto something solid in a world that had turned hostile. The rain didn't stop. The trail disappeared under mud and water. Twice, Lucas slipped and nearly took all three of them down. Connor kept them moving, guiding them off the main trail toward a narrow path Lucas wouldn't have seen in the dark. Almost there, Connor kept saying. Just a little farther. Victoria's breathing got worse. Shallow. Fast. Lucas glanced down and saw her leg. Swollen now, the skin around the bite turning dark purple. Stay with us, Lucas said, though he didn't know why he said it. What was he supposed to do? He wasn't a doctor. He was a freelance graphic designer who couldn't even keep his checking account above $500. Victoria's head lolled against his shoulder. I'm here, she murmured. The rock overhang appeared through the rain, a shallow cave carved into the mountainside, barely big enough for 3 people, but dry and out of the wind. Connor helped Victoria inside, easing her down onto the dirt floor. Lucas followed, his entire body shaking from cold and adrenaline. Connor immediately pulled out his radio again. Static. He tried his cell phone. No signal. Damn it, Connor muttered. Lucas looked at Victoria. She was leaning back against the rock wall, eyes half closed, one hand pressed against her thigh. Her skin was clammy. Her lips had a faint blue tint. How bad is it? Lucas asked Connor. Connor didn't answer right away. He was pulling supplies out of his pack. First aid kit, emergency blanket, water. Rattlesnake venom isn't usually fatal, Connor said carefully, but she needs anti-venom. Soon. How soon? Couple hours, maybe less. Lucas's stomach dropped. We can't get off this mountain in a couple hours. I know. Connor wrapped the emergency blanket around Victoria's shoulders, then started cleaning the bite wound. She hissed in pain but didn't pull away. I'm going to try to get to higher ground, Connor said. See if I can get a signal. You stay with her. Wait, you're leaving? I'll be back. 10 minutes, tops. Connor looked at Lucas. Keep her awake, keep her warm. If she stops responding, come find me. And then he was gone, disappearing into the rain. Lucas stared at the empty space where Connor had been, then at Victoria. She was watching him. You don't have to stay, she said quietly. Her voice was weak, but there was something steady underneath it. Something that made Lucas realize she meant it. She was giving him permission to leave. Yeah, I do, Lucas said. He moved closer, sitting down beside her. Up close, he could see how much pain she was in, the tightness around her eyes, the way her jaw clenched every time she shifted her leg. But she didn't cry, didn't panic. You're handling this better than I would, Lucas said. A faint smile flickered across her face. I'm terrified. You don't look terrified. Good, that's the point. Thunder rolled overhead. Rain hammered the rocks outside the overhang, pouring down in curtains. Lucas pulled off his soaked jacket and draped it over her legs, adding another layer of warmth. What's your name? Victoria asked. Lucas. Lucas Mercer. You're Derek's friend. Yeah, you know Derek. I know everyone who works for me. She paused. You're not corporate, though. I would have remembered you. I'm a freelancer, graphic design. And Derek dragged you here. Pretty much. She laughed. A short, pained sound. Terrible friend. He means well. They sat in silence for a moment. The storm showed no signs of stopping. Lucas checked his own phone. No signal. No help coming anytime soon. Do you have kids? Victoria asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. Yeah, a daughter, Emma. She's 6. Just the 2 of you? Lucas hesitated. Yeah. Victoria didn't push. She just nodded, her eyes distant. That's good, she said softly. Having someone. Lucas didn't know what to say to that. There was something raw in her voice, something unguarded. He'd expected the billionaire CEO to be sharp, controlled, untouchable. But sitting here in the dirt with venom working through her veins, Victoria Hale just looked human, lonely, even. What about you? Lucas asked. Anyone waiting for you back home? She shook her head. No. Not even... No. The finality in her voice killed the question. Lucas looked away, guilt creeping in. It wasn't his business. She was a stranger, a client, technically. He shouldn't be asking personal questions while she was fighting off snake venom. But then Victoria spoke again, quieter this time. It's hard to trust people when you have money, she said. Everyone wants something. A job, a favor, an investment. After a while, you stop being able to tell who actually cares and who's just performing. She glanced at him. You didn't have to help me. Of course I did. No, you didn't. Connor would have managed. Maybe, but you'd have been alone. Victoria held his gaze for a long moment. You're different. Different how? You don't look at me like I'm worth something. Lucas frowned. You are worth something. That's not what I mean. She shifted, wincing as pain shot through her leg. You look at me like I'm just a person. You are just a person. Not to most people. Lucas didn't know how to respond to that. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the overhang in sharp white light. He saw the pallor in Victoria's face, the way her hands trembled despite the emergency blanket. How are you feeling? He asked. Like I got bitten by a rattlesnake. That bad? Worse. He moved closer, adjusting the blanket around her shoulders. Their faces were inches apart now. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the fear she was trying so hard to keep buried. You're going to be okay, Lucas said. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. How? Because you're too stubborn to die on a mountain. That pulled another faint smile from her. You barely know me. I know enough. Connor returned 20 minutes later, soaked and breathless. No signal, he said grimly. Storm's too strong. We're stuck until it clears. Lucas felt his heart sink. How long will that take? Could be an hour, could be 3. Victoria's eyes fluttered closed. Lucas's hand shot out, gripping her shoulder. Hey, he said sharply. Stay awake. Her eyes opened. I'm awake. Keep talking to me. About what? Anything. Tell me about, I don't know, your company. How'd you build it? Connor was checking Victoria's pulse, his expression tense. The venom was spreading. Lucas could see it in the way her leg had swollen, the dark discoloration creeping up her thigh. Started in my garage, Victoria said, her voice faint. Wrote code for 18 hours a day. Lived on instant ramen and coffee. Thought I was going to change the world. You did change the world. Did I? She looked at him. Or did I just make a lot of money? Both, yes. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Maybe. Victoria, Connor said quietly, we need to keep your heart rate down. Try not to talk too much. But Lucas shook his head. No, she needs to stay awake. Lucas, she needs to stay awake, Lucas repeated, his voice harder than he intended. Connor stared at him, then nodded slowly. Lucas turned back to Victoria. Tell me more. What was the first thing you built? Mom, do you mean... Database management software, Victoria murmured. Boring as hell. But it worked. And then? Then I built something better. And then something better than that. And I didn't stop until I had something nobody else could replicate. You're a fighter. I'm tired. Yeah, well, you don't get to quit now. Her eyes met his. Why do you care? The question hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible to answer. Why did he care? He didn't know this woman, didn't owe her anything. She was a billionaire. He was a broke single dad. Their lives had no reason to intersect beyond this nightmare. But sitting here in the cold, watching her fight to stay conscious, Lucas realized he did care. Because you trusted me, he said finally. When everyone else panicked, you put your life in my hands. That means something. Victoria's hand found his. Her grip was weak, but it was there. Thank you, she whispered. The storm raged outside. Lucas held her hand and refused to let go. Hours blurred together. Connor tried the radio every 15 minutes. Nothing. The rain didn't stop. Victoria's condition got worse. Her breathing shallow, her skin cold despite the blankets. Lucas kept her talking, kept her awake, even when her words started slurring and her eyes drifted shut. Stay with me, Lucas said again and again. Come on, Victoria, stay with me. I'm trying, she whispered. Try harder. At some point, she started crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears sliding down her face, and Lucas realized it wasn't the pain. It was everything else, the loneliness, the fear, the exhaustion of being strong for so long. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. I don't want to die like this. You're not going to. How do you know? Because I won't let you. It was a stupid promise, an impossible promise, but Lucas meant it with everything he had. When the rescue helicopter finally arrived, 3 hours after the snakebite, brought in the moment the storm cleared enough for flight, Lucas barely registered it. He just held Victoria's hand as the paramedics rushed into the overhang, as they loaded her onto a stretcher, as they told him she was going to make it. She was unconscious by then, but her hand was still gripping his. And Lucas realized, somewhere in the chaos and the terror and the rain, something had shifted between them, something neither of them had words for yet. The helicopter blades carved through the clearing sky, a mechanical thunder that drowned out everything else. Lucas stumbled backward as paramedics swarmed the overhang, their movements efficient and practiced, voices clipped with medical jargon he didn't understand. Someone pulled him away from Victoria, and suddenly he was standing alone in the rain-soaked dirt, watching them work on her with an intensity that made his chest tighten. Connor was talking to one of the paramedics, gesturing toward Victoria's leg, his face grim. Lucas caught fragments of conversation. Rattlesnake, 3 hours, venom load. But the words felt distant, like they were happening to someone else. One of the paramedics, a woman with sharp eyes and steady hands, inserted an IV into Victoria's arm. Another was cutting away her pant leg, exposing the bite. The swelling had spread halfway up her thigh now, the skin mottled purple and black, angry and wrong. Is she going to make it? Lucas heard himself ask. Nobody answered him. They loaded her onto a stretcher, strapping her down with quick precision. Victoria's eyes were closed, her face pale as paper. The emergency blanket was gone, replaced with heated packs and medical equipment Lucas couldn't name. She looked small suddenly. Fragile. Nothing like the woman who'd stood at the trailhead that morning, commanding a group with nothing but her presence. You coming? One of the paramedics called to Lucas. He blinked. What? Are you coming with her? Lucas looked at Connor, confused. Connor nodded. She was holding your hand when we found you, the paramedic said. Figure you should be there when she wakes up. Lucas didn't argue. He climbed into the helicopter, crouching in the cramped space as they secured Victoria's stretcher. The rotors screamed to life. The ground fell away beneath them, and Lucas watched the mountains shrink into jagged shadows below. Inside the helicopter, everything was noise and urgency. The paramedics worked over Victoria with controlled intensity, checking her vitals, adjusting the IV. Speaking in shorthand, Lucas couldn't follow. He pressed himself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way, his hands shaking from cold and adrenaline and something else he couldn't name. Victoria's hand slipped off the stretcher, dangling in the air. Without thinking, Lucas reached out and took it. Her fingers were cold, limp, but after a moment he felt the faintest squeeze. She was still there. The flight to Denver took 20 minutes. They landed on the roof of Presbyterian Medical Center, where another team was already waiting. Lucas barely had time to let go of Victoria's hand before they whisked her away through automatic doors, leaving him standing on the helipad in wet clothes and borrowed boots, feeling like he'd just been dropped into someone else's life. A nurse appeared at his elbow. Are you family? No, I was with her on the mountain. You'll need to wait in the ER lobby. Someone will update you when we know more. Can I? Lobby, the nurse said firmly, but not unkindly. Lucas followed her inside through sterile white hallways that smelled like disinfectant and floor wax. The ER lobby was crowded, people with broken arms and stomach pain and crying children, all of them waiting for their turn. Lucas found an empty chair in the corner and sat down hard, his legs suddenly refusing to hold him up. He pulled out his phone. Dead. Of course it was dead. He sat there in silence, staring at the fluorescent lights overhead, and tried to make sense of the last 6 hours. This morning he'd been complaining about hiking boots. Now he was sitting in a hospital waiting room, covered in mud, waiting to hear if a woman he'd met 12 hours ago was going to survive. It didn't feel real. None of it felt real. Time moved strangely in the ER. Lucas watched people come and go, nurses calling names, doctors disappearing behind doors. His clothes slowly dried, stiff with dirt and sweat. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since breakfast, and breakfast felt like a lifetime ago. But he didn't move, didn't leave, just sat there, waiting. At some point, Derek appeared. Lucas looked up and saw his friend pushing through the lobby doors, still in his hiking gear, his face pale and anxious. When Derek spotted Lucas, relief flooded his expression. "Jesus Christ," Derek said, crossing the room in 3 strides. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You look like hell." "I'm fine," Lucas repeated. Derek dropped into the chair beside him. "They wouldn't tell me anything, just said Victoria was here and you came in with her. What the hell happened up there?" Lucas told him. The storm, the snake, the hours waiting in the overhang. Derek listened without interrupting, his face getting paler with every sentence. "You stayed with her," Derek said when Lucas finished. "The whole time. Connor left to find a signal. Someone had to. But you stayed." Lucas didn't know why Derek kept saying it like that, like it meant something. "She was scared," Lucas said quietly. "I couldn't just leave her alone." Derek stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he clapped Lucas on the shoulder, hard enough to hurt. "You're a good guy, man," Derek said. "A really good guy." They sat in silence after that. Derek tried to make conversation a few times, asking about Emma, about work, about anything except the woman currently fighting for her life somewhere in the building. But the words felt hollow, and eventually Derek gave up. 2 hours passed, then 3. Lucas's head started to pound. His eyes burned. Every time the doors to the ER swung open, his heart jumped, expecting someone to come out and tell him Victoria was dead. But nobody came. At hour 4, Derek left to get food. Lucas stayed. Couldn't have left if he wanted to. Something kept him rooted to that chair, some invisible thread tying him to Victoria Hale, even though they were strangers, even though this wasn't his responsibility, even though he had no reason to be here. When the doctor finally appeared, Lucas shot to his feet so fast his vision swam. The doctor was older, gray-haired, wearing scrubs spattered with something Lucas didn't want to identify. His face was tired but calm. "Are you here for Victoria Hale?" the doctor asked. "Yes. Is she?" "She's stable. We administered anti-venom and she's responding well. She's not out of the woods yet, but the next 24 hours look promising." Lucas felt something in his chest unclench. "Can I see her?" "Go." "She's sedated right now, won't wake up for a few hours, but if you want to wait, I'll wait." The doctor studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Room 412, 4th floor. Nurse will show you." Lucas followed the nurse through a maze of hallways, past rooms filled with beeping machines and hushed voices. Room 412 was at the end of a quiet corridor, the door half open, dim light spilling into the hallway. Victoria lay in the bed, small and still under white sheets. An IV drip fed into her arm. Monitors beeped softly, tracking her heartbeat, her oxygen levels, her blood pressure. Her face was peaceful, younger somehow, without the weight of consciousness. Lucas stood in the doorway, suddenly unsure. "You can sit with her," the nurse said gently. "Just don't touch any of the equipment." Lucas moved to the chair beside the bed and sat down. The room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of the monitors. He watched Victoria breathe, watched her chest rise and fall, and felt the exhaustion of the day crash over him all at once. He didn't mean to fall asleep, but somewhere between the 3rd and 4th hour of watching over her, his eyes slipped closed, and the world went dark. When Lucas woke, the room was brighter. Morning light streamed through the window, harsh and unforgiving. He blinked, disoriented, his neck stiff from sleeping in the chair. Victoria was awake. She was watching him. "You stayed," she said. Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. Lucas sat up, rubbing his face. "Yeah." "Why?" It was the same question she'd asked on the mountain, and Lucas still didn't have a good answer. "Didn't feel right to leave," he said finally. Victoria's eyes searched his face, looking for something. After a moment, she looked away. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." A nurse came in then. checking Victoria's vitals, asking her questions about pain levels and nausea. Victoria answered in short, controlled sentences, her CEO mask slipping back into place, even in a hospital gown. When the nurse left, the silence stretched between them again. "How long was I out?" Victoria asked. "About 12 hours. The others? Made it down fine. Storm cleared right after the helicopter came for you." She nodded slowly. Her hand moved to her thigh, where bandages wrapped the bite site. "How bad is it?" "Bad, but the doctor said you'll recover." "Will I be able to walk?" Eventually, Victoria's jaw tightened. Lucas could see her mind working, calculating the damage, the recovery time, the disruption to her company. She looked angry. Not at him, at the situation, at the vulnerability. "I need my phone," she said. "You need rest." "I need my phone. There are calls I have to make, people who need to know." "Victoria." Lucas's voice was firm. "You almost died yesterday. The calls can wait." She stared at him, and for a second Lucas thought she was going to argue. Then something in her expression shifted. The fight went out of her, and she just looked tired. "You're right," she said softly. "I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Being helpless." Lucas leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Nobody's good at it. But you don't have to do this alone." "I always do things alone." "Maybe that's the problem, but..." The words came out harsher than he meant, and Lucas immediately regretted them. But Victoria didn't look offended. She looked surprised, like nobody had ever said that to her before. "You don't know me," she said. "I know enough. You know what you saw on a mountain during a crisis. That's not real life." Felt pretty real to me. Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but then her eyes caught on something behind Lucas. Her expression changed, going carefully neutral. Lucas turned and saw a man in an expensive suit standing in the doorway. 50s, silver hair, the kind of polished presence that announced money and power before he even spoke. "Victoria," the man said, relief flooding his voice. "Thank God." "Richard," Victoria said, and Lucas heard the exhaustion in her tone. Richard crossed the room in quick strides, his eyes scanning the monitors, the IV, Victoria's pale face. "I came as soon as I heard. The board's been in chaos. Nobody knew what was happening. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You were bitten by a rattlesnake. I'm aware." Richard finally seemed to notice Lucas. His gaze swept over him. The dirty clothes, the borrowed boots, the obvious lack of corporate polish, and dismissed him in an instant. "Who's this?" Richard asked Victoria. "Lucas Mercer. He saved my life." Richard blinked, looked at Lucas again, this time with something closer to interest. "You were on the hike?" "Yeah." "Richard is my CFO," Victoria said, her tone flat. "Richard, Lucas stayed with me until the rescue team arrived." "Well," Richard extended a hand, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you. We're all very grateful." Lucas shook his hand. Richard's grip was firm, professional, and completely impersonal. "I need to speak with Victoria privately," Richard said, already turning back to her. "There are urgent matters." "Richard," Victoria interrupted. "Not now." "Victoria, the board is demanding answers. The media is already running stories. We need to control the narrative before—" "I said not now." The steel in her voice cut through the room like a blade. Richard froze, his mouth half open, clearly unaccustomed to being shut down. But after a moment he nodded stiffly. "Of course. We'll talk later." He glanced at Lucas one more time, his expression unreadable, then left. The silence that followed felt heavy. "Sorry about that," Victoria said. "He seems concerned. He's concerned about the company, not me." Lucas didn't know what to say to that. He stood up, suddenly feeling like he was intruding on something he didn't understand. "I should go," Lucas said. "Let you rest." "You don't have to. You need sleep. And I need to check in with my daughter." Victoria's expression softened slightly at the mention of Emma. "How old did you say she was?" 6. "Does she know what happened?" Not yet. My mom's been watching her. I'll call her once I get home." Victoria nodded. Then, hesitantly, she said, "Will you come back?" The question caught Lucas off guard. Do you want me to? Yes. It was a simple answer, but the way she said it, quiet, almost vulnerable, made Lucas realize how much it cost her to ask. Okay, he said. I'll come back. He left before he could second-guess himself. The next 3 days blurred together in a strange routine. Lucas would drop Emma off at school, handle whatever freelance work he could manage, then drive to the hospital. He'd sit with Victoria for a few hours, talking about nothing important. Books, movies, Emma's latest obsession with dinosaurs. Sometimes Victoria's assistant would appear with paperwork, and Lucas would excuse himself, wandering the hospital cafeteria until the business was finished. Other times, Richard or other board members would show up, filling the room with tension and corporate urgency. Lucas learned to recognize the pattern. Victoria's shoulders would stiffen, her voice would go cold, and she'd become someone else. Someone harder. Someone he didn't quite recognize. But when they left, she'd soften again, and she'd ask Lucas to stay a little longer. On the 4th day, Derek cornered him in the hospital parking lot. Dude, Derek said, leaning against Lucas's car. What are you doing? What do you mean? You've been here every day, for hours. So? So Victoria Hale is a billionaire CEO. You're a freelance designer with a 6-year-old. What exactly do you think is happening here? Lucas unlocked his car, not meeting Derek's eyes. I'm just checking on her, making sure she's okay. Why? Because nobody else is. Derek stared at him. That's not true, isn't it? Everyone who visits her talks about the company, the stock price, the media coverage. Nobody asks how she's actually doing. And you do? Yeah, I do. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. Man, you know this isn't going anywhere, right? She's going back to her world and you're going back to yours. That's how this works. I'm not expecting anything. Aren't you, Seth? Lucas didn't answer. Because the truth was, he didn't know what he was expecting. He just knew that every time he thought about not visiting Victoria, something in his chest twisted uncomfortably. Just be careful, Derek said finally. I don't want to see you get hurt. On the 5th day, Victoria was cleared to go home. Lucas arrived at the hospital to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed in clothes her assistant had brought, her leg heavily bandaged but functional. She looked stronger, more herself. They're letting you out? Lucas asked. Finally, another day in here and I was going to lose my mind. Where are you going? Home? Victoria hesitated. I have a place in Cherry Creek, but the stairs might be a problem. You need help getting settled? My assistant can handle it. That's not what I asked. Victoria looked at him, and Lucas saw the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to say no, wanted to maintain the distance between them, the safe boundary that kept her world separate from his. But she didn't. Yes, she said quietly. I could use help. Victoria's house was not what Lucas expected. Victoria's house was not. He'd imagined something massive, cold, all glass and steel and modern angles designed to impress rather than comfort. Instead, the house was older, a restored Victorian in a quiet neighborhood, with warmth in the architecture and trees in the yard. It was large, yes, but it felt human. Lived in, even if Lucas suspected Victoria spent most of her time at the office. He helped her inside, his arm supporting her as she navigated the front steps. Her assistant, a sharp woman named Caroline, who looked at Lucas like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve, had already prepared the downstairs guest room, turning it into a temporary bedroom so Victoria wouldn't have to climb stairs. Thank you, Caroline, Victoria said. You can go. Are you sure? I can stay if... I'm fine. Lucas will help me get settled. Caroline glanced at Lucas, then back at Victoria, clearly wanting to argue, but she just nodded. Call if you need anything. When Caroline left, the house fell silent. Lucas stood in the entryway, suddenly aware of how out of place he was. Everything here was expensive, tasteful, carefully chosen. He was still wearing jeans with a hole in the knee and a t-shirt Emma had spilled juice on that morning. You can relax, Victoria said, reading his discomfort. It's just a house. A really nice house. It's too big for one person. She said it matter-of-factly, but Lucas heard the loneliness underneath. He followed her into the guest room, where she sat down on the bed with visible relief. Do you need anything? Lucas asked. Water? Food? I'm fine. Victoria. She looked up at him. What? Let me help. You've done enough. Clearly not, since you're about to argue with me instead of resting. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. You're stubborn. Yeah, well, takes one to know one. Lucas went to the kitchen and found it immaculate, everything in its place, barely any food in the refrigerator. He made tea, something simple, something his mom used to make when he was sick, and brought it back to Victoria. She took the mug, cradling it in both hands. Thank you. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the afternoon light slanted through the windows, golden and warm. Lucas should leave. He knew he should leave. Emma would be home from school soon, and he'd already spent too much time here, too much time letting himself believe this strange connection between them was real. But he didn't move. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. Why are you really here? Lucas met her eyes. What do you mean? You don't owe me anything. We barely know each other. But you've been at the hospital every day. You drove me home. You made me tea. She paused. Why? Lucas thought about Derek's warning, thought about the impossibility of this situation, thought about all the reasons he should walk away. Because when I'm with you, he said slowly, I feel like I'm doing something that matters, and I haven't felt that way in a long time. What did you must that? Victoria stared at him. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. I feel the same way, she said softly. The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Lucas's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His mom, asking when he'd be home. Reality crashing back in. I have to go, Lucas said, standing up, but I'll check on you tomorrow. You don't have to. I know. Victoria watched him walk to the door. Then, just as he reached it, she spoke again. Lucas? He turned. Thank you, she said. For seeing me. Lucas didn't know exactly what she meant by that, but he nodded anyway. As he drove home through Denver traffic, his hands tight on the steering wheel, Lucas tried to convince himself this was just kindness, just helping someone who needed it, nothing more. But he knew he was lying to himself. Something was happening between him and Victoria Hale, something neither of them had planned for, something that felt inevitable and impossible at the same time. And Lucas had no idea what to do about it. Emma was waiting on the front steps when Lucas pulled into the driveway, her backpack dumped beside her, her face pressed against her knees. His mother stood on the porch, arms crossed, worry written across her features in deep lines. Lucas killed the engine and got out, his stomach sinking. Hey, Bug, he called to Emma. What's wrong? Emma looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. You weren't here. I know. I'm sorry. I had to help someone. You're always helping someone. Her voice cracked. You're never here anymore. The words hit him harder than they should have. Lucas crouched down in front of her, his knees protesting after days of hospital chairs and tension. That's not true, he said gently. Yes, it is. You leave early and come home late, and you don't even eat dinner with me anymore. Kiwasem. Lucas glanced at his mother, who gave him a look that said they'd talk about this later. He turned back to Emma, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. Emma, listen. A woman got hurt on the hike I went on, really hurt, and I've been making sure she's okay. Is she more important than me? No, of course not. You're the most important person in my life. Then why do you keep leaving? Lucas didn't have a good answer, because the truth was complicated, messy, and he didn't understand it himself. He'd been spending every spare moment with Victoria, telling himself it was about making sure she recovered, but somewhere along the way it had become something else, something that pulled at him even when he was home, even when he was supposed to be present. I'm sorry, he said finally. You're right. I haven't been here enough. Emma sniffled, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Do you promise to stay home tomorrow? I promise. The whole day? Lucas hesitated. He'd told Victoria he'd check on her, but Emma's face was so earnest, so desperate for reassurance, that the answer came easy. The whole day, he said. Emma threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him backward. Lucas held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo and playground dirt, and felt guilt settle heavy in his chest. Inside, his mother made dinner while Emma chattered about school, her sadness evaporating as quickly as it had appeared. Lucas listened, nodding in the right places, but his mind kept drifting to Victoria alone in that too-big house, drinking tea he'd made, wondering if he'd come back. After Emma went to bed, his mother cornered him in the kitchen. "You want to tell me what's going on?" she asked, drying dishes with methodical precision. "Nothing's going on." "Oh, Lucas James Mercer, I raised you. Don't lie to me." Lucas leaned against the counter, exhaustion pulling at him. "The woman who got hurt, Victoria Hale. I've been helping her." "The billionaire?" "Yeah." His mother was quiet for a moment, processing. "And you're spending every day with her because she doesn't have anyone else. She's a billionaire. She has everyone. She has employees. That's not the same thing." "Eat what? I guess this." His mother set down the dish towel, her expression softening. "Lucas, honey, be careful. Everyone keeps saying that because we care about you and Emma." She paused. "You know, this can't go anywhere, right? I'm not expecting it to go anywhere. Aren't you?" It was the same thing Derek had said, and Lucas still didn't have an answer that didn't sound naive or foolish or both. "She's a person," Lucas said quietly. "That's all. Just a person who needed help." But his mother studied him for a long moment, then pulled him into a hug. "Your heart's too big sometimes," she murmured against his shoulder. "It's going to get you hurt." "Maybe," Lucas said. "But I'd rather that than the alternative." He didn't visit Victoria the next day, or the day after. He stayed home with Emma, took her to the park, helped with homework, made elaborate breakfasts, and read bedtime stories until his voice went hoarse. He threw himself into being present, into being the father Emma deserved. But at night, after Emma fell asleep, he'd stare at his phone and wonder if Victoria was okay, if she needed anything, if she noticed he hadn't come back. On the third day, his phone rang. Unknown number. Lucas answered. "Hello?" "Lucas?" Victoria's voice, clear and steady. "It's Victoria." His heart did something stupid in his chest. "Hey, how are you feeling?" "Better. The leg's healing well." A pause. "You haven't visited." "I know. I'm sorry. My daughter needed me." "Don't apologize. She should come first." Another pause, longer this time. "I just wanted to make sure you were all right." "I'm fine." "Good." She sounded like she wanted to say something else, but couldn't find the words. "Well, I'll let you go." "Victoria, wait." "Yes?" Lucas rubbed his face, torn between the promise he'd made to Emma and the pull he felt toward this woman he barely knew. "I'll come by tomorrow, if that's okay." "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to." The silence that followed felt weighted with things neither of them could say over the phone. "Tomorrow, then," Victoria said softly. "Tomorrow." When Lucas showed up at Victoria's house the next afternoon, he found her in the backyard. She was sitting on a bench beneath an old oak tree, her injured leg propped on a cushion, a laptop balanced on her knees. She looked up when she heard the gate, and something in her expression relaxed. "You came," she said. "Told you I would." Lucas crossed the yard and sat down beside her. The afternoon was warm, the kind of late September weather that felt borrowed from summer. Birds moved through the branches overhead, and somewhere down the street a dog barked. "How's Emma?" Victoria asked. "Good, clingy, but good." "She missed you." "Yeah." Lucas looked at his hands. "I wasn't being fair to her, spending so much time away." "You were helping me." "That doesn't make it okay." Victoria closed her laptop, setting it aside. "You're a good father." "I'm trying to be." "That's all anyone can do." They sat in silence for a while. Lucas noticed Victoria's laptop screen before she'd closed it. Spreadsheets, charts, emails stacked like digital paperwork. Even recovering from a rattlesnake bite, she was working. "Do you ever stop?" Lucas asked. "Stop what?" "Working." Victoria followed his gaze to the laptop. "Not really." "Why not?" "Because if I stop, I remember how quiet the house is." The admission was so raw, so honest, that Lucas didn't know how to respond. He just sat there, shoulder to shoulder with her on the bench, and let the silence hold what words couldn't. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said after a while. "Sure." "Emma's mother, where is she?" Lucas had known the question would come eventually. It always did. But that didn't make it easier to answer. "She left," he said, "when Emma was 8 months old. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It wasn't working. We weren't." He trailed off, searching for the right words. "She didn't want to be a mother, and I couldn't make her want it." That must have been hard. It was terrifying. I had no idea what I was doing. Still don't most days. He glanced at Victoria. "But Emma's the best thing that ever happened to me, even when it's hard." Victoria was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. "You really believe that?" "Of course. Most people say that kind of thing, but they don't mean it. Not really. It's just what you're supposed to say." "I mean it." "I know." She looked away. "I've never wanted children." "Why not?" "Because I'd be terrible at it. I work 80-hour weeks. I don't know how to turn off my brain. I barely know how to exist outside of a boardroom." She paused. "And because I'm terrified I'd end up like my mother." "What was your mother like?" Victoria's jaw tightened. Cold, ambitious, more interested in her career than her daughter. "I swore I'd never be like her, and then I looked up one day and realized I'd built the exact same life." Lucas didn't know what to say to that. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but he barely knew her. What did he know about her life, really? Just what he'd seen in a crisis and a handful of quiet afternoons. "You're not as cold as you think," Lucas said finally. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Cold people don't make tea for guests. They don't ask about other people's kids. They don't cry on mountainsides." Victoria looked at him sharply. "I didn't cry." "You did. When you thought you were going to die. That was fear. That was human." Victoria opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Her shoulders sagged slightly, some of the tension bleeding out of her. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly. "Do what?" "Be vulnerable. Let people in. I've spent so long building walls that I don't know how to take them down." "Then don't take them down all at once," Lucas said. "Just crack a window. Let some air in." "What?" That's. She laughed, short and surprised. "That's terrible advice." "It's practical advice." "Same thing." They smiled at each other, and for a moment Lucas forgot about the difference in their bank accounts, their worlds, their lives. For a moment they were just two people sitting under a tree on a warm afternoon. Then Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her expression changed, hardened. "I need to take this. I'll give you privacy." "No, stay." Victoria answered. "Richard, what is it?" Lucas couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Victoria's face go from neutral to cold to something darker. Anger, maybe, or frustration. "I already told you no," Victoria said, her voice clipped. "We're not moving forward with the merger." More talking from Richard. "I don't care what the board thinks. It's a bad deal, and I'm not doing it." Victoria stood up, forgetting about her injured leg. She winced, sat back down hard. Lucas reached out to steady her, but she waved him off. "This conversation is over," Victoria said. "Tell the board I'll be back in the office on Monday, and we'll discuss it then." She hung up without waiting for a response. The silence that followed was sharp. "Sorry," Victoria muttered. "What was that about?" "Work. Always work." She rubbed her temples. "The board wants me to merge with a competitor. It would make us bigger, more profitable, more powerful. Everything a corporation is supposed to want. But you don't want it." "No." "Why not?" Victoria was quiet for a moment, staring at nothing. "Because the company I built was supposed to mean something. It was supposed to solve problems, make technology accessible, help people. And somewhere along the way, it became about profit margins and stock prices and making shareholders happy." She looked at Lucas. "If I do this merger, we become just another faceless corporation, and I don't know if I can live with that." Lucas understood then why she'd been so alone on that mountain, why nobody asked how she was really doing, because everyone around her saw the CEO, the company, the money. Nobody saw the woman who'd started in a garage trying to change the world. "Then don't do it," Lucas said simply. "It's not that easy." "Why not?" Because I have a responsibility to the shareholders, the employees, the... What about responsibility to yourself? Victoria stared at him. What? You built this company. You made it what it is. Doesn't that give you the right to decide what it becomes? That's naive. Maybe, but it's also true. Victoria shook her head, but Lucas saw something shift in her expression. Uncertainty, maybe, or possibility. You make it sound simple, she said. It probably isn't, but that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for. They sat in silence again, but it felt different now. Heavier. Like they'd crossed some invisible line neither of them could uncross. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, frowned. I have a conference call in 10 minutes, she said. I should go anyway. Emma's got soccer practice. Lucas stood, and Victoria followed more carefully, testing her weight on her injured leg. She walked him to the gate, moving slowly but steadily. Thank you, she said, for listening. Anytime. I mean it. You're the only person who talks to me like I'm... She trailed off. Like you're what? Like I'm just Victoria, not the CEO, not the billionaire. Just me. Lucas smiled. That's because that's who I see. Something flickered in Victoria's eyes. Something warm and dangerous and terrifying. Lucas, she said softly. Yeah? I'm glad you didn't die on that mountain. He laughed. I'm glad you didn't die on that mountain. We make a good team then, he. The words hung between them, meaning more than they should. Lucas felt the weight of it, the impossibility of it, the pull of something he couldn't name. I'll see you soon, he said, and left before he could do something stupid. Over the next 2 weeks, Lucas fell into a routine. Mornings with Emma, afternoons with Victoria, evenings back home. He told himself it was temporary, that once Victoria was fully recovered, he'd step back, return to his normal life. But every time he showed up at her house, she seemed a little less guarded, a little more real. They talked about everything and nothing, books, movies, politics, embarrassing childhood stories. Victoria told him about learning to code in her mother's basement, about the first time she pitched to investors and got laughed out of the room. Lucas told her about the panic of those first nights alone with Emma, about learning to braid hair from YouTube videos, about the time he accidentally locked them both out of the apartment in the middle of winter. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, just sat in comfortable silence, Victoria working on her laptop while Lucas sketched designs for freelance projects. It felt easy, natural, like they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. But Lucas could feel the clock ticking. Victoria was healing. Soon she'd go back to work, back to her real life, and this strange bubble they'd built would pop. On a Thursday afternoon, Lucas arrived to find Victoria in the kitchen, attempting to cook. What are you doing? He asked, staring at the chaos on the counter. Making dinner. Victoria gestured at the cutting board covered in mangled vegetables. Or trying to. You don't cook? I have a chef. Had a chef. I gave her the month off since I'm barely eating anyway. Lucas surveyed the damage. What were you trying to make? Pasta. How hard can pasta be? Apparently very hard. He moved to the counter, gently taking the knife from her hand. Let me help. You don't have to. I know, but if I don't, you're going to lose a finger. Victoria laughed, stepping back. Lucas started salvaging what he could, dicing the vegetables properly, setting water to boil. Victoria watched him work, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. You're good at that, she observed. Years of practice. When you're a single parent, you learn to cook, or you go broke on takeout. Did Emma's mother cook? Was itchy? Lucas glanced at her. They hadn't talked about Sarah since that first conversation. Sometimes, but she wasn't around enough for it to matter. Do you miss her? No. Not at all? Lucas was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I miss the idea of her, the person I thought she was when we met. But the real Sarah? No. She made her choice and I made mine. What was your choice? Emma, every time. Victoria was quiet, watching him work. Lucas could feel her gaze on him, heavy with something he couldn't name. You're a better person than I am, Victoria said finally. That's not true. It is. I don't know if I could do what you did. Give up everything for someone else. You would if you loved them. I don't know if I'm capable of that kind of love. Lucas stopped chopping, turning to look at her. Why would you say that? Because I've never felt it. Not for anyone. Not even close. She met his eyes. Until recently. The kitchen went very quiet. Lucas's heart was pounding. He knew what she was saying, knew what it meant. And he knew he should shut this down, should remind them both why this was impossible, why they lived in different worlds and there was no bridge between them. But he didn't. "Victoria," he said, his voice rough. "I know," she said quickly. "I know this is crazy. You have Emma and I have the company and we barely know each other. But I can't stop thinking about you, about the mountain, about every conversation we've had since, about how you're the only person who makes me feel like I'm not alone." "You're not alone." "I was. Before you." Lucas set down the knife, moving toward her. Victoria's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't back away. "I think about you too," Lucas admitted. "All the time. Even when I shouldn't." "What are we doing?" Victoria whispered. "I don't know. This can't work. I know. We're from completely different worlds. I know. So why can't I walk away?" "Same reason I can't." They stood there, inches apart, the space between them charged with everything they couldn't say. Lucas could see the fear in Victoria's eyes, the vulnerability, the hope she was trying desperately to hide. "I'm scared," she said. "Me too. What if I hurt you? What if I'm not capable of being what you need? What if you are?" Victoria's breath hitched. Lucas reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek, and Victoria closed her eyes. "Lucas?" she breathed. "Yeah?" "Don't let me run." "I won't." He kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, like they were both testing whether this was real or just a dream they'd wake up from. Victoria's hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer, and suddenly gentle wasn't enough. The kiss deepened, months of tension and loneliness and need pouring out in a single moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "This is a terrible idea," she murmured. "Probably. You have a daughter, I have a company. We're going to hurt each other. Maybe, or maybe we're going to figure it out." Victoria pulled back slightly, searching his face. "You really believe that?" "I believe you're worth the risk." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I haven't cried in years, and you've made me cry twice now." "Sorry, don't be." She kissed him again, softer this time. "Just don't leave. I'm not going anywhere." They finished making dinner together, moving around the kitchen with an ease that felt practiced, even though it was new. They ate at her dining room table, talking and laughing like nothing had changed, even though everything had. When it was time for Lucas to leave, Victoria walked him to the door. He kissed her goodbye, and this time it felt like a promise. "I'll see you tomorrow," Lucas said. "Tomorrow," Victoria agreed. As Lucas drove home through Denver streets lit with evening light, he felt something in his chest unclench, something that had been tight and closed for years. He didn't know what came next, didn't know how they'd navigate this, how he'd explain it to Emma, how Victoria would handle the scrutiny when people found out. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, Lucas felt like he was moving towards something instead of just surviving. And that had to be worth something. The first cracks appeared on a Monday morning. Lucas was making breakfast when his phone rang. Derek's name flashed across the screen, and something in the early hour made Lucas's stomach tighten before he even answered. "You need to see this," Derek said without preamble. "See what?" "Check your email. I'm sending you a link." Lucas opened his laptop, still holding the phone to his ear. The link led to a business news site, and the headline hit him like a fist to the gut. Hale Industries CEO spotted with mystery man. New romance or business deal? Below it, a photo. Grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. Lucas and Victoria leaving her house 3 days ago, his hand on her back. Her looking up at him with an expression that left no room for misinterpretation. "Jesus," Lucas breathed. "Yeah," Derek said. "It gets worse. Keep reading." Lucas scanned the article. Most of it was speculation, but there were details that made his skin crawl. His name. Emma's name. The fact that he was a freelance designer barely scraping by. The phrase, "financial opportunist," appeared twice. Who leaked this? Lucas asked. Does it matter? It's out there now. And Lucas, man, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to blow up. It's nobody's business. She's a billionaire. Everything's everyone's business. Lucas hung up and immediately called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. You saw it, she said. Not a question. Yeah. I'm sorry. I should have known this would happen. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. I knew what getting involved with me would mean. I should have warned you. Lucas heard something in her voice, not regret exactly, but resignation. Like this was inevitable, and now they'd have to deal with the consequences. What do we do? Lucas asked. I'm handling it. My PR team is drafting a statement. Saying what? That we're friends. That you helped me after the accident. That everything else is speculation. Is that what we are? Friends? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. No, but it's what I have to say publicly. For now. For now, Lucas repeated, tasting the bitterness of it. Lucas, please, I need you to trust me on this. If we confirm anything, it becomes a feeding frenzy. They'll dig into every corner of your life, Emma's life. I can't let that happen. So we lie. We protect each other. Lucas rubbed his face, exhaustion pulling at him. Okay, we do it your way. Thank you. She paused. Are you still coming over today? Should I? I want you to, but I'll understand if you need space. Lucas thought about Emma, about the photographers who might show up at her school, about the comments people would make. He thought about his mother's warning and Derek's concern and every rational reason to walk away. I'll be there, he said. When Lucas arrived at Victoria's house that afternoon, there was a black SUV parked on the street. He recognized it from previous visits. Her security detail, previously invisible but now conspicuously present. The driver nodded at Lucas as he passed, and Lucas felt the weight of being watched settle over him like a shroud. Victoria answered the door before he could knock. She looked tired, her hair pulled back messily, still wearing pajamas, even though it was past noon. I look like hell, she said. You look human. She pulled him inside, closing the door firmly behind them. The house felt different now, less like a sanctuary and more like a bunker. It's been a bad morning, Victoria said, leading him to the living room. Her laptop was open on the coffee table, surrounded by papers and empty coffee mugs. The board called an emergency meeting. They're concerned about the optics. Of you dating someone? Of you dating someone like you, Bam. The words hung there, ugly and honest. Lucas sat down slowly. They said that? He asked. Not in those words, but yes. Victoria sat beside him, her hands twisting together. Richard thinks you're after my money. Half the board agrees with him. That's insane. Is it? From their perspective, you appeared out of nowhere, spent weeks getting close to me, and now we're photographed together looking very much not professional. I saved your life. That's softbites. I know that, you know that. But to them, you're just another person trying to take advantage of me. She laughed bitterly. It's always the same story. Someone gets close, and everyone assumes they have an agenda. Lucas felt anger rising in his chest, hot and sharp. Do you think that? What? Do you think I'm using you? What? Do you think... Victoria looked at him like he'd slapped her. No, of course not. Then why does it matter what they think? Because they control the company. Because if they decide I'm compromised, they can vote me out. Because I've spent 10 years building something that matters, and I can't lose it, because I fell for someone they don't approve of. The words came out raw, unfiltered, and Victoria immediately looked away like she'd revealed too much. You fell for me, Lucas said quietly. I didn't mean... Victoria, look at me. She did reluctantly. Her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. You fell for me, Lucas repeated, and that scares the hell out of you. Yes, because you think I'm going to leave, or because you think you'll mess this up? Both, neither. I don't know. She pressed her hands to her face. I've never done this before. Never let anyone this close. And now everyone's watching and judging and waiting for it to fall apart. And I don't know how to protect you from all of it. Lucas reached for her hands, pulling them away from her face. I don't need protection. I need honesty. I'm being honest. Are you? Because right now it feels like you're looking for an excuse to push me away before I can hurt you. Victoria flinched. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. They sat in tense silence. Outside, a car door slammed. Lucas heard voices, footsteps on the porch. Victoria's head snapped up. I told Caroline not to come by today, she muttered, standing up. But it wasn't Caroline. The front door opened and Richard walked in like he owned the place. He stopped short when he saw Lucas, his expression hardening. Victoria, Richard said, his voice cold. We need to talk. I'm busy. This can't wait. Richard, I said, the board is demanding you end this relationship immediately. Richard's eyes flicked to Lucas, dismissive and sharp. Whatever this is, it's over. Today. What I ate. Jeez. Lucas felt his jaw tighten. Victoria's face went pale, then red. Get out of my house, Victoria said, her voice deadly quiet. I'm trying to help you. By walking in uninvited and making demands? That's not help, Richard. That's control. Someone needs to control you before you destroy everything we've built. We? Victoria's voice rose. You mean me. I built this company. Not the board. Not you. Me. And now you're throwing it away for some broke single dad who probably can't even afford his own rent. The words landed like a punch. Lucas stood up, his fists clenched, but Victoria stepped between them before he could say anything. Leave, Victoria said to Richard. Now, or I'll have security throw you out. Richard stared at her, disbelief written across his face. You're serious? Completely. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make. Richard looked at Lucas one more time, something ugly in his expression, then turned and walked out. The door slammed behind him. Victoria stood frozen, her shoulders rigid, her breathing shallow. Lucas wanted to reach for her, but something in her posture warned him to wait. I'm sorry, Victoria said finally. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do. What he said about you was designed to hurt you. Not me. Lucas moved closer carefully. I don't care what he thinks, but I care what you think. Victoria turned to face him, and Lucas saw the exhaustion written across her features. I think I'm about to lose everything I've worked for, and I think it's worth it if I get to keep you. You're not going to lose the company. You don't know that. Then fight for it. You told me once that you built something that was supposed to mean something. Don't let them take that away just because you fell in love. Victoria's breath caught. You think that's what this is? Don't you? She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Then she closed the distance between them and kissed him hard, desperate, like she was trying to prove something to herself. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. I love you, she whispered. I don't know how it happened or when, but I do, and it terrifies me. I love you too, Lucas said. And yeah, it's terrifying, but I'm not going anywhere. Even if this gets worse? Even then. Victoria pulled him close, burying her face in his shoulder, and Lucas felt her shake with silent tears. He held her, steady and sure, while outside the world waited to tear them apart. The next week was brutal. More articles appeared, more photos taken by photographers Lucas never saw but always felt lurking nearby. Someone leaked his financial records, publishing his credit score and bank statements for the world to see. The comment section on every article was a wasteland of cruelty. People calling him a gold digger, a con artist, a deadbeat dad using his daughter to manipulate a lonely billionaire. Emma's school called. Other parents had seen the articles. There were questions, concerns, thinly veiled accusations wrapped in polite language. Lucas pulled Emma out of school for the week, keeping her home where she was safe from prying eyes and cruel whispers. His mother came to help, her face tight with worry but her support unwavering. You could end this, his mother said one evening after Emma had gone to bed. Walk away, let it die down. I could, Lucas agreed, but you won't. No, his mother sighed. She must be something special. She is. And you're sure about this? About her? Lucas thought about Victoria's laugh, the way she looked at Emma with cautious wonder, the vulnerability she showed only to him. He thought about the mountain, the overhang, the moment he decided to stay when everyone else ran. I've never been more sure of anything, Lucas said. Meanwhile, Victoria was fighting her own war. The board called meeting after meeting, pressure mounting from every direction. Investors were nervous. Stock prices fluctuated. Media coverage was relentless, painting Victoria as either a victim of manipulation or a fool blinded by loneliness. Victoria refused to bend. She stood in boardrooms and defended not just Lucas, but her right to have a personal life that didn't require shareholder approval. She gave one carefully crafted statement confirming their relationship and refusing to discuss it further. When Richard tried to force a vote of no confidence, Victoria called his bluff and won, but the cost was visible. Every time Lucas saw her, she looked thinner, more tired, the weight of it all pressing down on her shoulders. "You need to rest," Lucas told her one night, finding her at her dining room table at midnight, buried in paperwork. "I need to finish this proposal. Victoria, if I can show them that the merger isn't necessary, that we can grow without it, they'll back off. But I need the numbers to be perfect." Lucas gently closed her laptop. "The numbers can wait. You need sleep. I can sleep when this is over." "When is it over? When you collapse? When you make yourself sick?" Victoria looked up at him, frustration and exhaustion warring in her expression. "What do you want me to do? Give up? Let them win? I want you to take care of yourself. You're not invincible." "I have to be." "No, you don't. Not with me." Something in Victoria's face crumbled. She put her head down on the table, her shoulders shaking, and Lucas realized she was crying. Really crying. Not the silent tears he'd seen before, but full, body-racking sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her while she fell apart. She cried for the loneliness, the pressure, the exhaustion of being strong for so long. She cried for the girl who'd worked in her mother's basement, believing she could change the world, and for the woman who'd built an empire and found it hollow. "I'm so tired," Victoria whispered against his chest. "I know. I don't know if I can keep doing this." "Then don't. Not alone." Victoria pulled back, wiping her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Stop carrying everything by yourself. Let me help. Let the people who actually care about you help." "I don't know how." "Then learn. We'll figure it out together." Victoria studied his face, searching for something. "You really mean that?" "Every word." She kissed him, soft and grateful and exhausted. When she pulled back, some of the tension had left her shoulders. "Okay, she said. "Together." 2 weeks after the story broke, Victoria invited Lucas and Emma to dinner. Lucas had been avoiding it, terrified of what mixing their worlds would mean. But Victoria had asked, quietly persistent, and Lucas knew they couldn't keep hiding forever. Emma was nervous in the car, fidgeting with her seatbelt. "Is she really a billionaire?" Emma asked for the third time. "Yes, Bug." "And she's your girlfriend?" "Yes, but she's old." Lucas tried not to laugh. "She's 30. That's not old. Us. It's older than you. By 2 years." Emma considered this. "Does she like kids?" "I think so, but she's never spent much time with them." "What if she doesn't like me?" Lucas glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror, his heart squeezing. "She's going to love you. How could she not?" But Emma's worry mirrored his own. What if this didn't work? What if Victoria couldn't connect with Emma? What if Emma hated the attention, the scrutiny, the impossibility of this whole situation? What if Lucas was making a terrible mistake? Victoria answered the door wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more nervous than Lucas had ever seen her. Her eyes went immediately to Emma, and Lucas saw her swallow hard. "Hi," Victoria said, crouching down to Emma's level. "You must be Emma. I'm Victoria." Emma stared at her with wide eyes. "You're really pretty." Victoria blinked, surprised. "Thank you. So are you. Dad says you're really smart." "Your dad's very kind." He says you build computers." "Sort of. I write software that helps computers work better." Emma's face lit up. "Like magic?" Victoria smiled, genuine and warm. "Exactly like magic." Lucas watched them, something tight in his chest loosening. Emma peppered Victoria with questions as they walked inside, and Victoria answered each one with patience Lucas didn't know she possessed. She showed Emma her study, explaining her work in terms a 6-year-old could understand. She asked Emma about school, about dinosaurs, about her favorite books. Over dinner, Emma dominated the conversation, telling Victoria elaborate stories about playground politics and the ongoing drama with her best friend Sophia. Victoria listened like Emma was the most fascinating person she'd ever met, asking follow-up questions, laughing at the right moments, completely present in a way Lucas suspected she rarely was. After dinner, Emma fell asleep on Victoria's couch, exhausted from talking. Lucas covered her with a blanket while Victoria cleaned up the kitchen. "She's wonderful," Victoria said quietly, loading the dishwasher. "She likes you." "I like her." Victoria paused, her hands still on a plate. "I was terrified she'd hate me." "Why would she hate you?" "Because I'm taking her father's attention, because I'm disrupting her life, because I don't know how to be around children, and I was sure I'd say the wrong thing." Lucas moved closer, taking the plate from her hands. "You were perfect with her." "I wasn't. I felt awkward and uncertain the entire time." "That's called being human. Emma doesn't need perfect. She just needs real." Victoria looked at Emma sleeping on the couch, something soft in her expression. "I never thought I wanted this. A family, connection, all of it seemed too complicated, too risky. And now? Now I think maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just scared." Lucas pulled her close, and Victoria leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. They stood like that for a long time, watching Emma sleep, feeling the weight of what they were building settle around them. "What happens next?" Victoria asked finally. "We keep going, keep fighting, keep choosing each other." "What if it's not enough? What if it is?" Victoria tilted her head up to look at him. "You're an optimist. I'm a realist. And the reality is, I love you. Emma likes you. That's more than most people get. The board's not backing down. Then you fight harder, or you walk away and build something new." Lucas brushed her hair back from her face. "But whatever you do, you don't have to do it alone anymore." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve you." "That's the grief talking." "No, I mean it. You've given me so much, and I've given you nothing but problems." "You've given me hope," Lucas said simply. "That's worth more than you know." Victoria kissed him, and Lucas tasted salt from her tears. When they pulled apart, she was smiling despite the tears. "I'm going to fix this," she said. "All of it. I'm going to make it right." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I will." Lucas believed her, because Victoria Hale didn't know how to quit, didn't know how to back down, and now that she had something worth fighting for, Lucas suspected there was nothing that could stop her. The storm that had nearly killed her on the mountain had given her something she'd been missing her entire life. And Lucas knew, watching her hold his sleeping daughter's hand with careful tenderness, that Victoria would burn the world down before she let it go. Victoria called the board meeting herself, not through Richard, not through her assistant, not through the carefully orchestrated channels corporate protocol demanded. She sent the email at 2 a.m, subject line simple and direct. "Emergency board meeting, tomorrow, 9 a.m., non-negotiable." Lucas found out when she showed up at his apartment at 7 the next morning, still in yesterday's clothes, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. "I'm doing it," she said when he opened the door. "Doing what?" "Everything. All of it. Today." Lucas pulled her inside, glancing down the hallway to make sure Emma was still asleep. "Victoria, what are you talking about?" She paced his small living room, energy radiating off her like electricity. "I stayed up all night going through the numbers, the contracts, everything. And I realized something. The board doesn't own Hale Industries. I do. 51% controlling interest. I built in that protection when we went public because I knew someday they'd try to take it from me." "Okay. Which means they can complain and threaten and make demands all they want, but they can't actually force me to do anything. The merger, the relationship, all of it. It's my decision, not theirs." Lucas sat down slowly on the arm of his worn couch. "So what are you going to do?" Victoria stopped pacing, turning to face him. Her expression was fierce, determined, and underneath it all, terrified. "I'm going to tell them the truth. About us. About what I want. And if they don't like it, they can resign." "Victoria, I know it's risky. I know I could lose people, lose credibility, lose everything I've built. But I can't keep living like this. Hiding, apologizing for wanting something real. letting them dictate who I'm allowed to love. She moved closer, taking his hands. You asked me once what I was willing to fight for. This is it. You, Emma. A life that's mine and not theirs. Well, Lucas felt something swell in his chest, pride and fear tangled together. What if it goes wrong? Then we deal with it, together, like you said. Emma's door creaked open. She appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes, her pajamas rumpled. Why is Victoria here? Emma asked, her voice still thick with sleep. Victoria crouched down, meeting Emma's eyes. Because I needed to talk to your dad about something important. I'm sorry if we woke you. Are you in trouble? Emma asked, surprisingly perceptive. Maybe, but I'm trying to fix it. Emma considered this, then walked over and patted Victoria's shoulder. My dad's really good at fixing things. He'll help you. Victoria's eyes went glassy. She pulled Emma into a quick hug, then stood up fast, wiping at her face. I have to go, Victoria said. The meeting's in 2 hours. Do you want me there? Lucas asked. No. This is something I need to do alone. She paused at the door. But after, will you be here? Always. Victoria smiled, fragile and brave, then left. Lucas stood in his apartment with his daughter, listening to Victoria's footsteps fade down the hallway, and said a silent wish into the universe that this would work. The Hale Industries boardroom was on the 42nd floor, all glass and steel and expensive furniture designed to intimidate. Victoria had been in this room hundreds of times, but today it felt different, heavier, like the walls themselves were waiting to see if she'd break. She walked in at exactly 9 o'clock. The board was already assembled, 14 faces, most of them older men who'd made fortunes in tech before Victoria was born. Richard sat at the far end, his expression carefully neutral. A few board members looked curious. Most looked annoyed at being summoned on short notice. Victoria took her seat at the head of the table and didn't bother with pleasantries. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this was short notice, but we need to have a conversation that's been delayed too long. Victoria, Richard started, if this is about the merger, it's not about the merger. It's about this company, what it stands for, and where we go from here. She opened her laptop, pulling up the presentation she'd built in the early morning hours. The first slide appeared on the screen behind her. Hale Industries, a return to purpose. When I founded this company 12 years ago, Victoria began, it wasn't about profit margins or market share. It was about solving problems, making technology accessible, building something that mattered. She clicked to the next slide, showing their original mission statement alongside their current quarterly reports. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. We became just another corporation chasing growth for growth's sake. With all due respect, one of the older board members interrupted, that growth made everyone in this room very wealthy. Yes, it did. And I'm grateful for that. But wealth without purpose is meaningless. Victoria clicked again. Numbers filled the screen. Projections, market analysis, competitor data. The merger you're pushing would make us bigger, more profitable in the short term, but it would also compromise everything that made Hale Industries unique. We'd become absorbed into a larger entity, our identity diluted, our mission lost. The market demands scale, Richard said. The market demands value, and we can provide that without sacrificing who we are. Victoria spent the next 20 minutes walking them through an alternative plan, strategic partnerships instead of mergers, targeted growth in underserved markets, a return to innovation over acquisition. The numbers were solid, the logic sound. She'd done her homework, but she could see the skepticism in their faces. They wanted the sure thing, the safe bet, not her vision of what the company could be. When she finished, silence filled the room. Finally, the board chairman spoke. This is impressive work, Victoria, but it doesn't address the elephant in the room, which is, your judgment has been compromised. The relationship with Lucas Mercer, the media circus, the distraction from company business. The board has concerns about your ability to lead effectively. There it was. The real issue, out in the open. Victoria closed her laptop and stood up. You're right. We need to talk about Lucas. She could see Richard lean forward, victory already forming in his eyes. Lucas Mercer saved my life. Victoria said, her voice steady. When I was bitten by that snake, when everyone else panicked, he stayed. He kept me conscious. He refused to leave me alone in the worst moment of my life. And in the weeks since, he's shown me something I'd forgotten existed. Genuine human connection without agenda. Victoria, Richard tried to interrupt. I'm not finished. She looked at each board member in turn. I know what you think, that he's using me, that I'm being naive, that this is a distraction from the business. But here's what you don't understand. Before Lucas, I was alone in a way that money couldn't fix. I worked 90-hour weeks because going home to an empty house was unbearable. I built this company into an empire and found it hollow because I had no one to share it with. She moved to the windows, looking out at Denver spread below her. Lucas doesn't want my money. He doesn't want access or influence or anything I can give him professionally. He wants me, just me. The woman who cries when she's scared and doesn't know how to cook pasta and works too hard because she's terrified of being alone. And yes, falling in love with him has changed me. It's made me question my priorities. It's made me realize that building a successful company means nothing if I destroy myself in the process. Victoria turned back to face them. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to continue seeing Lucas. I'm going to build a relationship with him and his daughter. I'm going to have a personal life that isn't subject to board approval. And I'm going to run this company better than I ever have before, because now I have a reason to build something sustainable instead of just relentlessly profitable. And if we vote no confidence, Richard asked quietly, Richard, then you'll lose. I have controlling interest. You can make noise, you can resign, you can try to tank the stock price. But you cannot remove me. This company is mine, and I'm taking it back. Well, the silence that followed was absolute. Then the chairman started laughing. Not mockery, genuine amusement. Well, he said, I haven't seen you this fired up in years. Victoria blinked. I'm serious. I know you are. And you're right. He looked around the table. She's right. We've been so focused on growth that we forgot why we invested in Victoria in the first place. Because she was brilliant and driven and willing to take risks no one else would. He nodded at her. I vote we table the merger discussion and seriously consider this alternative plan. Absolutely not, Richard said. This is insane. She's compromised. She's in love, another board member said. There's a difference. The debate erupted, voices overlapping, arguments flying. But Victoria noticed something. Half the board was nodding, considering, maybe even agreeing. Richard noticed too. His face went red. This is a mistake. All of you will regret this. Then resign, Victoria said calmly. If you can't support this direction, I won't force you to stay. Richard stared at her, disbelief and anger warring in his expression. For a moment, Victoria thought he might actually do it. Then he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The room fell quiet again. Well, the chairman said. That was dramatic. Victoria felt her knees go weak. She sat down hard, adrenaline crashing through her system. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. Richard's been pushing his own agenda for months. This just forced the issue. The chairman smiled. You did good, Victoria. Reminded us why we believed in you in the first place. The vote came quickly after that. 9 in favor of Victoria's plan. 3 against. 1 abstention. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Victoria left the boardroom in a daze, Caroline rushing to keep up with her as she headed for the elevator. That was incredible, Caroline said. I've never seen you like that. I think I'm going to throw up. Please don't. You have 3 interviews scheduled this afternoon, and cancel them. Cancel everything. I need to. Victoria trailed off, suddenly knowing exactly what she needed. I need to go home. But she didn't go home. Not to her house in Cherry Creek with its empty rooms and expensive furniture. She went to Lucas's apartment, parking illegally on the street and taking the stairs 2 at a time. Lucas opened the door before she could knock, Emma peeking around his legs. How did it go? Lucas asked. Victoria burst into tears. Lucas pulled her inside and Emma ran to get tissues, and Victoria sat on his worn couch sobbing while she tried to explain what had happened. The vote. Richard leaving. The board actually listening to her. All of it pouring out in a messy, emotional torrent, that was nothing like the polished CEO the world usually saw. When she finally stopped crying, Emma was sitting beside her, patting her knee awkwardly. "It's okay," Emma said seriously. "Daddy cries sometimes too. Emma?" Lucas said, mortified. "What? You do. When we watch sad movies." Victoria laughed through her tears. "Thank you, Emma. That makes me feel better." Emma beamed, proud of herself. She wandered off to her room, leaving Lucas and Victoria alone. "I take it the meeting went well?" Lucas asked. "I think so. I don't know. I told them I was in love with you, and they couldn't fire me for it, and half of them agreed, and Richard quit. And now, I'm supposed to run a multi-billion-dollar company while dating a freelance designer, and I have no idea what I'm doing." Lucas pulled her close. "Sounds about right. I'm terrified." "Me too." Victoria pulled back to look at him. "You are? Of course. You're a billionaire CEO. I'm a single dad who lives in a one-bedroom apartment and drives a car from 2008. This is insane." "Then why are we doing it?" "Because I love you, and because insane is better than safe and lonely." Victoria kissed him, tasting salt from her tears. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I need to ask you something," Victoria said. "Okay. And you need to be honest with me, even if you think it'll hurt my feelings." Lucas's expression turned serious. "What is it?" Victoria took a breath. "I'm going to step back from the company." "Not completely. I'll still be CEO, still make major decisions. But I'm hiring a COO to handle day-to-day operations. I'm cutting my hours to something sustainable. I'm building a life outside of work." She met his eyes. "Which means I'll have time, real time. For you and Emma, if you want that." "Are you asking me, I'm asking if you'll let me try to be part of your life, part of Emma's life. I know I'm not good at this. I'll mess up constantly, but I want to try." Lucas cupped her face in his hands. "Yes. 1,000 times yes. Even though I work too much and don't know how to braid hair and sometimes forget to eat because I'm too focused? Even though people are going to judge us and talk about us and make our lives difficult? Even though," Victoria smiled through fresh tears. "Okay then." The next 6 months were messy and complicated and nothing like either of them expected. The media coverage continued, but it shifted. Once people saw Victoria and Lucas together, really together, at Emma's school events and grocery stores and normal, everyday places, the narrative changed. They weren't a scandal anymore. They were just two people trying to make something work against unlikely odds. Some people still judged. Some still whispered about gold diggers and poor decisions. But more people saw something else. A single father who'd raised his daughter with grace and devotion. A brilliant woman who'd built an empire but had the courage to admit she wanted something more. Lucas's freelance work picked up, ironically. Companies wanted to hire the man who'd captured Victoria Hale's attention. He was careful about which clients he took, determined not to exploit the connection. But the financial pressure eased, and for the first time in years, Lucas could breathe without constantly checking his bank account. Emma adjusted better than anyone expected. She liked Victoria, especially after Victoria started showing up for important things. School plays, soccer games, birthday parties. Victoria was awkward at first, uncertain how to interact with a child who wasn't impressed by her resume. But Emma was patient, and Victoria was determined, and slowly they built something real. One Saturday, Lucas found them in his kitchen attempting to bake cookies. The kitchen was a disaster. Flour everywhere, Emma covered in chocolate chips. Victoria laughing so hard she had tears running down her face. "What happened here?" Lucas asked. "We're baking," Emma announced proudly. "It's harder than YouTube makes it look," Victoria admitted. Lucas surveyed the damage. "Yeah, I see that. Bold." But he didn't care about the mess. He cared about the sound of Victoria's laughter, about Emma's chocolate-covered grin, about the way his small apartment suddenly felt full in a way it never had before. That night, after Emma went to bed, Victoria and Lucas sat on his tiny balcony looking at the city lights. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said. Lucas's stomach tightened. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. I hope." She took his hand. "I've been looking at houses." "Okay." "Bigger houses with yards, good school districts." She paused. "Room for a family." Lucas's heart started pounding. "Victoria, I know this is fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But I want a future with you and Emma, a real future. And this apartment is too small for all of us, and my house is too empty, and I thought maybe we could find something that's ours. Together. Are you asking me to move in with you? I'm asking if you'd want to build something with me. Not just a relationship, but a home, a life. She looked nervous, vulnerable in a way that still surprised him. What do you think? Lucas thought about the mountain, about the storm, about the moment he decided to stay when everyone else ran. He thought about every choice that had led him here, to this balcony with this woman, building something impossible and real. I think yes, Lucas said. I think absolutely yes. Victoria's smile was brighter than the city lights spread below them. They found a house in a quiet neighborhood between their worlds. Not too big, not too small. A backyard for Emma, an office for Victoria, space for Lucas's studio. A kitchen big enough for all of them to cook together, making the kind of messy, imperfect meals that tasted like home. Moving day was chaos. Emma ran through the empty rooms, claiming bedrooms and closets and declaring where her toys would go. Victoria's assistant tried to organize while Lucas's mother supervised, making sure nothing important got lost in the shuffle. Derek showed up with beer and unsolicited advice, and somehow it all came together. That first night in the new house, they ordered pizza because nobody had energy to cook. Emma fell asleep between them on the couch, exhausted from excitement. Lucas carried her to her new bedroom, tucking her in while Victoria watched from the doorway. She's happy here, Victoria said softly. Yeah, she is. Lucas kissed Emma's forehead, then joined Victoria in the hallway. Are you? Victoria looked around at the house. Their house. Not hers or his, but theirs. And nodded. I didn't know I could be this happy. Didn't know it existed. Neither did I. They stood in the hallway of their new home, and Lucas thought about how far they'd come. From strangers on a mountain trail to this. A family built from crisis and courage, and the decision to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. Can I tell you something? Victoria asked. Always. That storm, the one that nearly killed me. I used to think of it as the worst day of my life. She looked at him. But it gave me everything. You, Emma, this. A second chance at a life I didn't know I wanted. Lucas pulled her close. Funny how that works. What? How the worst moments can become the best ones, if you're brave enough to let them. Victoria kissed him, soft and sure, and Lucas tasted the future in it. Not perfect because nothing ever was, but real, honest, worth fighting for. Months turned into a year, then another. The media moved on to newer scandals. Richard found another company to work for, and Victoria's board settled into her new leadership style. Hale Industries thrived under her refocused vision, proving that profit and purpose weren't mutually exclusive. Lucas's business grew. He hired an assistant, took on bigger clients, found success in ways he'd never imagined. But he was careful not to lose himself in work the way Victoria once had. He made time for Emma's school events, for family dinners, for lazy Sundays where they did nothing but exist together. Emma flourished. She had a father who adored her, and a woman who'd become more than just her dad's girlfriend. Victoria would never replace Emma's mother. That wound existed, would always exist, but she could be something else. Something new. Someone who showed up and stayed and loved Emma not because she had to, but because she chose to. On a Sunday afternoon 2 years after the storm, they went back to the mountains, not the same trail. Victoria had no desire to revisit the place she'd almost died, but somewhere close, a different path with gentler slopes and clearer skies. Emma ran ahead with the confidence she'd inherited from both of them, pointing out birds and rocks and everything worth noticing. Lucas and Victoria followed hand in hand, moving slower, savoring the moment. Do you ever regret it? Victoria asked. Everything that happened, the scrutiny, the chaos, how hard it was. Lucas thought about it honestly. Sometimes. When Emma comes home crying because someone said something cruel about us. When photographers show up at her school. When things get complicated in ways they never should be. He squeezed her hand. But no, not really. Not when I think about what we have now. I regret that it hurt Emma, that it hurt you. I know, but we survived it. We're stronger for it. Victoria stopped walking, pulling him to face her. The mountains spread around them, beautiful and indifferent, the same peaks that had witnessed their beginning. "I never thought I'd say this," Victoria said, "but I'm grateful for that rattlesnake." Lucas laughed. "That's dark, but true. Without it, we never would have happened. I'd still be alone in my too big house, working myself to death, believing that success and loneliness were the same thing. And I'd still be scraping by, convincing myself that surviving was enough." They stood there together, mountain wind in their faces, Emma's laughter echoing from up ahead. Lucas thought about all the choices that had led them here. The decision to go on a hike he didn't want to take, the decision to stay when everyone else ran, the decision to keep choosing each other even when the world said they shouldn't. Maybe that's what love was, in the end. Not the easy moments, not the perfect days, but the decision to stay in the storm, to hold someone's hand when the venom was spreading and the rescue wasn't coming and everything felt impossible. To choose them anyway, over and over, until choosing became as natural as breathing. "Come on," Victoria said, tugging his hand. "Emma's waiting." Oh. They caught up to Emma at a lookout point with views that stretched forever. Emma was talking to an older couple who were asking about the trail ahead, giving detailed directions with the confidence of someone who'd been hiking these mountains her whole life. "She's going to be something," Victoria said quietly, watching Emma gesture enthusiastically. "She already is." Victoria leaned against Lucas, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Emma finished her conversation and ran back to them, full of energy and joy and the absolute certainty that she was loved. "Can we come back next week?" Emma asked. "If you want," Lucas said. "I want to. This is my favorite place now." Victoria and Lucas exchanged a look. The mountain that had almost killed Victoria had become Emma's favorite place. There was something poetic in that. Something about how the worst things could become beautiful if you gave them enough time and perspective. They hiked back as the afternoon light turned golden, Emma between them, holding both their hands. Lucas looked at Victoria over Emma's head and saw his whole life reflected in her eyes. The past, the present, the future they were building together. It wasn't perfect. They still fought about work-life balance. Victoria still worked too much sometimes. Lucas still worried about money, even though he didn't need to anymore. Emma still had hard days when she missed the mother who'd left or resented the attention their family attracted. But they were building something real, something that mattered, not because it was easy or comfortable or what anyone expected, but because they'd chosen it, and they kept choosing it every single day. The storm that had nearly killed Victoria Hale had given them everything, had taught them that survival wasn't the same as living, that success meant nothing without someone to share it with, that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up in the hardest moments and refusing to leave. As they drove home through mountain roads with Emma singing off-key in the back seat, Lucas reached over and took Victoria's hand. She squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was everything they'd become. Two people who'd been lost in different ways. A single father trying to be enough. A billionaire who had everything except what mattered. A mountain storm. A rattlesnake. A choice to stay instead of run. And from that impossible beginning, a family. Not perfect, not easy, but real and honest and worth every difficult moment it took to build. The mountains disappeared in the rearview mirror, but Lucas could still feel them. The weight of what they represented. The reminder that sometimes the scariest moments become the most important ones. That sometimes you have to almost lose everything to realize what you actually want. They made it home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Emma ran inside to feed her fish while Victoria and Lucas stood in the driveway, watching the last light fade. "Thank you, Source," Victoria said quietly. "For what?" "For not leaving. On the mountain. After. Through everything." Lucas pulled her close. "Where else would I go?" Victoria smiled against his chest. "Nowhere, I hope." "Nowhere," Lucas agreed. And as they walked inside their home, the one they'd built together from crisis and courage, and the stubborn refusal to give up, Lucas knew with absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Not just on the mountain when he'd stayed beside a dying stranger, but every day since, when he'd chosen love over fear, connection over safety, and the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of building a life with someone who'd started as impossible and become inevitable. The storm had saved them both, and in the end, that's all any of us can hope for. To survive the worst moments and find something worth living for on the other side.